Have you ever had that one anime series that you never thought you were going to appreciate so deeply until you got a lot older, especially when you first started watching this particular anime series when you were a very young kid or you were in your tweens at the latest or even your early teens? That was my case with Great Teacher Onizuka. Yes, I caught this particular anime series when I was 12 years old and in the sixth grade. Sounded like a pretty reasonable age to catch this anime, which was about a former biker punk ending up in a school where he ends up becoming a teacher, although with not so noble purposes. So I really came onto GTO, for short from Great Teacher Onizuka, by complete chance when I was at that rather impressionable age, because this was an anime that struck my attention. From the opening theme, especially with that engine revving before the main song started, to how Onizuka presented himself as someone who's so devil may care, but someone that you don't want to mess with. That was just my impression of what I was going to receive from Eikichi Onizuka. This otherwise punkish young adult with a really foul mouth and someone that you don't always want to meet up with on a daily basis, but once you get to know him a lot more deeply, he does have his own unusual principles, but not the ones that you would expect him to deliver in an orthodox way. So with my experience with Great Teacher Onizuka, at first it didn't appeal to me so much because I was just 12 years old and I wasn't so sure what to make of it. But as I kept my mind open with this particular anime series, I was able to appreciate it a lot more, especially when it comes to how much of a charismatic yet really roguish individual Onizuka is, especially when you least expect this guy to be a teacher at the Holy Forest Academy, a school that is really dubious for its students driving away nearly every single teacher. That is until Onizuka steps forward to the challenge and be the new teacher does he manage to show some strength and control in his own special way, and not in the traditional I'm the superb teacher sense. He does understand, let alone empathize with the students who need the help the most, but he is also not afraid to call out the blackmailers, manipulators, and bullies, and do so in a way that just makes their karmic punishment all the more hilarious, all the more deserved, and all the more cathartic. It's just so cool and amazing seeing Onizuka dish out his own brand of teaching about life, growing up, and really proving yourself as a person in general, and just do so in a way that was accessible as well as intriguing. That's just how much I was able to love and appreciate everything that Eikichi Onizuka managed to give his students. Although, when you think about why he wanted to be a teacher in the first place, it doesn't really come from a noble place. He just thought that being a teacher meant that he could have all the access to high school girls' panties and naughty bits, which is very questionable, to say the least, about Onizuka as an individual. We get it. Onizuka may not be the most lovable, let alone most likable individual that you would encounter even on a dark alley. And he would not be anyone you would call conventionally good. But he is someone with his own brand of principles, morals, and just someone who does the right thing, but not in the way that you would really want him to do something like that. And then, of course, the way he punishes the bullies, blackmailers, and people who just seem to do no good is just awesome. Take, for example, Hidemi Ota, a young, rich girl who thinks she's so entitled to have everything she wants because her father is an assemblyman and her mother is just as wealthy, let alone someone with enough financial and social capital. So she basically has Onizuka's rival, Teshigawara, as her sex slave, considering that Teshigawara always licks her foot and constantly sucks up to her. But Onizuka was never going to take her crap by any stretch of the imagination. When Hidemi orders Onizuka to lick her foot and go under the table after that whole mess that he caused with his elephant costume, which also functioned as a phallic symbol, he does not take kindly to her blackmailing and proceeds to spank the living heck out of her bottom in a public place. Now, I know that what he does is, like I said, unconventional, and you wouldn't expect this to happen to anybody, let alone expect anyone to do something like this. But when he knows someone's bluffing, and when he knows that someone is manipulating him or blackmailing him, he is not afraid to call anybody out, especially when he calls out Hidemi Ota. And I just love the way he mentions that he doesn't care if Hidemi's father is an assemblyman or a garbage man. She was still rotten for demanding him to be her little sex slave, and he was not going to cross that line, especially when it comes to brats like her. Then there's also the case of Urumi Kanzaki. Now, one thing I like about Urumi Kanzaki is that she is a very clever yet devious young girl who is pretty much that one person who's not afraid to bend certain rules, but also has a very mischievous streak about her. Sure, she is someone who has been known to be a very clever student, an overachiever, and someone with a lot of goals and a lot of things going for her. But one thing that I've also learned to accept about Urumi Kanzaki is that there are also some occasions where she has some vulnerability, especially when it comes to the demands of how much her parents want her to succeed in certain things, and sometimes also being betrayed by certain teachers that she looked up to. And the relationship between her and Onizuka shows that there is one of trust and understanding and a surprising amount of empathy. And they also have this sort of mentor-student-like bond in which they do gel well together. Both of them have a strong sense of mischief, and they also work extremely well off of each other. And of course, when it comes to Onizuka and his male students, there's also a strong bond between them, thus showing that there's the importance of stepping up and growing up to be a man, and also showing that you don't just pussy out, you don't cower, especially when it comes to fulfilling what you want to do or what you need to do for the people that you care for. And that's something that Onizuka managed to instill with the male students that he's with, having a sense of opening yourself up to the world and living boldly, never pussying out, never cowering, living life to the fullest, and really embracing what you really are, and most importantly, living with courage, even though sometimes you'll have to do some pretty uncalled for things to achieve said courage. And he also is there especially for those who are afflicted by bullying. I mean, I still remember those times when he was comforting this one young boy who has been badly bullied by some really catty bitches of classmates. And what Onizuka managed to do is also humiliate them in the most cathartic way possible. And that is just how much I've grown to love Eikichi Onizuka, because while teachers, conventional teachers, may not like him as a proper teacher and think that his teaching methods are way too unorthodox, way too out there, and just not something that would fit the mold, there is that sense of odd charm and that awesome relatability and that really strong sense of amicability that he has for the people that he cares for, even though his initial intentions are questionable at best. But you do get to see sides of him that shows that he does live up to his word. He doesn't take crap from anybody, and he is not afraid to live the life that he wants to live. And let's also not forget that one time that Onizuka did a pile driver on the vice principal for being way too harsh on the students. And what he delivers to that vice principal is that how on earth can these kids grow if they're constantly being oppressed and if they're constantly being downtrodden and belittled? And it's because of teachers of this type of ilk that these students cannot live out their best lives or their best potential. And if that's going to be the case, then he's not going to end up being a teacher. And that's one thing that great teacher Onizuka also addresses, and that is how harsh the educational system can be, especially if you go to a Japanese school. Now, I'm sure that those of you who have lived in Japan or have studied in Japan or are also Japanese natives would also be aware that Japanese schools have been really well known, let alone infamous, for integrating a lot of these strict and uncompromising rules, which could be said also for the likes of schools in China and South Korea, in terms of how rigid yet really high expectation like their systems really are. And that's something that great teacher Onizuka managed to challenge with flying colors and made me reflect a lot more about myself as a person, someone who is more than just the achievements they've done in school or the things that they've done, let alone the mistakes I've made. And that's what great teacher Onizuka or GTO has managed to show me, let alone show me with flying colors, because I did feel for a lot of the characters, especially those who have been bullied or have been blackmailed or who have been just so frustrated with themselves for not measuring up to their parents or their teachers' expectations. And then when you have someone like Onizuka, who is himself quite the rowdy punk, yet still has his morals and principles by his side in his own special way, he really does have what no conventional teacher has. And that's also that empathy and the understanding that he has, but he's also not afraid to call out all the junk, all the garbage, and all of the really manipulative and blackmailing crap that he sees on a daily basis. And as for what I could manage to acquire from GTO, it's helped me to embrace challenges a lot more and live the life I want to live as freely as possible, and therefore embrace life with all its triumphs, joys, surprises, doubts, disappointments, furies, and many, many color palettes that I've learned to become a lot more aware of. And GTO would not have been the anime classic that it has been without some seriously amazing talents. Yes, there's no doubt that on the Japanese side, you have Wataru Takagi voicing GTO, Eikichi Onizuka. And I definitely love Wataru Takagi as Eikichi Onizuka because of that roughness that he was able to provide, but also that sense of strength and virility that made him shine all the more and do so in a way that made me salute his performance every single time I heard him as this iconic punk turned teacher. Then there is also the likes of Fumiko Orikasa, who was Azusa Fuyutsuki, who is essentially Onizuka's love interest slash colleague. And of course, we can't forget about Ayako Kawasumi and Tomoko Kawakami, Megumi Ogata as well. She had a role on there. And then Junko Takeuchi, who played Miyabi Aizawa. Basically, you got a lot of fine voice actors and voice actresses on the Japanese side doing such fabulous jobs. But I must give it to the English dub for being just as superb and just as amazing. You have the likes of Stephen J. Blum voicing Onizuka with his devil may care punk attitude, but also an unexpected sense of wisdom that he managed to provide in terms of seeing that dichotomy between the rowdy punk biker with the young adult male figure for these teenagers. And then you got the likes of Wendy Lee, Felice Sampler, Kirk Thornton, and everybody just managed to do fabulous, fabulous jobs embodying their respective characters. I also must suggest, let alone emphasize, that there have been some really fun characters that I've learned to appreciate, such as Tomoko, who is just so adorable and so funny, all thanks to how slow-witted she can be, but at the same time she has the innocence about her that makes her all the more charming. And I also couldn't help but relate to a lot of the male students in Onizuka's class, especially the 3 to 4 main ones, because of what they had to endure with previous teachers, let alone try to rebel against authority until Onizuka steps in and pretty much improves their perception of the world around them, not by necessarily being the more authoritative figure, but also by understanding them on their level and therefore being just as chaotic as they are. And that is what great teacher Onizuka represents for me. It's chaotic fun. It's absolute brilliance. It's just a wonderfully fun anime and a thought-provoking anime that has made me proud to be the man I am today, especially when it comes to me being a tutor to a lot of kids who come up to me for English, and especially when it comes to understanding where they're coming from, and also being unafraid to live the life that I want to live. And that's just something that I've learned to appreciate so much more about great teacher Onizuka, or GTO, as a grown-up. It's an anime that I did not expect to cherish when I first started watching it when I was 12 years old. And as I grew older, I've managed to gain a deeper and more profound appreciation for GTO. And true story, I even went to Manila barely 21 years ago, and I remember going to Fully Booked and saw that there was some DVD copies of Great Teacher Onizuka. I was pretty surprised that there was also some DVDs of Great Teacher Onizuka, but for some reason I just didn't bother to buy it at the time because I was still trying to gather a lot more about what more could I like about GTO, what more can I further appreciate about it. And back then I was still unsure at the time. At least now as a grown-up, I can say with confidence that GTO is still one of the best anime series I've seen when I was younger, and it's one that I continue to salute with all my being. And it's also one that I would recommend to anybody, whether you're a teacher or a high school student or a college student, to go on and watch it. You may not always agree with what Eikichi Onizuka does to students. You may not always agree with how he does things as a biker punk turned teacher. But what you can acquire from Eikichi Onizuka's brand of virility, manliness, strength, and overall charisma is someone that you could be so proud to call as a teacher in your own special way. And whether you caught Great Teacher Onizuka when you were younger or are starting to appreciate it a lot more as a grown-up, please tell me your thoughts. Did you first start loving Great Teacher Onizuka when you first watched it on television, or when you first bought it on DVD, or when you watched it online? Who was your favorite character, whether it was Onizuka himself, or the students that he's with, or Fuyutsuki, or the vice principal? Or was there something that you loved so much about Great Teacher Onizuka that you did not expect to love? Or did this anime not hold up so well in your eyes? Just please let me know in the comments below. I hope you all enjoyed my exposition about what makes Great Teacher Onizuka so great in my eyes and why I think it still holds up to this very day. And I'll say it this: it's the characters, the message, and the overall excitement and the understanding that I have from this anime that I never expected to acquire. But here I am, learning to appreciate it a lot more each and every single day. Take care, everybody, and thanks for watching.